What is the juxtaposition between the evolution of apes and the space mission to potentially contact alien life forms? Is this the natural step in evolution, or is there some kind of mistake in the middle? Is AI the only way to progress as a species? Space has always fascinated me since I was a kid. I really wanted to be an astronaut. Along the way, I got distracted by films and other hobbies. Space took a backseat, though I was still curious and fascinated by it. Instead of taking science related subjects at high school, I took up arts. I was not good at mathematics for the most part, and thus probably couldn't have entered into the science field. I don't know if there's a way to change trajectory and go into the space research and exploration. There's so much still left to do and explore that it seems limiting to just stick to whatever was decided at a naive age when you're getting into university. Perhaps it's just a thought that the grass might be greener on the other side, just like the another planet, Jupiter, Mars. We believe that we won't have the same problems we have here on Earth. It is a thought that contacting alien life forms with the help of AI can alleviate our struggles. Suppose in this film the AI malfunctioned and acted out of ego. What if it didn't? What if the mission was completed as planned? Would it have changed anything? Would it have changed the lives of those astronauts who died in the grand scheme of things? Because at the end of the day, they're really sacrificing their lives for the species, for the improvement of humanity, right? So, is this worth the cost? And I also want to ask, like, what if they all went ahead as planned and everything was fine? No AI screwed over the people on the ship. Would it have still made any difference to the mission? What happened in the end with Dave? Would he have faced the same consequence? Would all the other astronauts have faced the same consequence if they went to Jupiter? We really gotta think, all right? And I also thought, what if instead of an AI there was a human captain who went rogue? Would it have been the same? Because how many times have we seen a human captain acting out of ego? And here AI acts out of ego, but human captains can also act out of ego, and we have seen this in other Kubrick films, with films like Paths of Glory, The Shining, Full Metal Jacket. All these films have shown how egotistical people in power can be. And this film, we see the AI in power. You know, and AI was built by humans. It was built by humans. So, as human beings, we are so imperfect. How can we expect to build something that is perfect, that has no mistakes at all whatsoever? Like, even if we make the most perfect AI, there's always a room for error because it was built by humans at the end of the day. And in the film, we see in the very end, it's a human that shuts down the AI and he mans the ship by himself and goes to Jupiter. So it I think the movie is really kind of trying to say that this AI thing is not really the way to go, and maybe the space thing is also not the way to go. There was a lot of thoughts that were going in my head throughout the film. This is my third viewing of the film, and one that has been the most comprehensive because the previous times I wasn't as film aware as I am now, and thus missed a lot of movements. Not to mention, I watched in a poor sound system, so I barely understood the dialogues like the first time around. And this time, I understood much better. Everything was much clearer. I watched in a quiet place, in a quiet room, in a dark room, so that I could get all the details as good as possible. I watched in 4K, so the way that as best as it is intended to be. Of course, the very intended version is on a 70 millimeter screen, but in Hong Kong there's no 70 millimeters, so I can only watch on a 4K. And hopefully, if there's a re-release, I can watch it in the cinemas. For a space epic, when you really think about it, not much happens in this movie after the Dawn of Man sequence. It's like a standard investigative procedural set in space with very grand special effects and production design, which are like some of the best that I've ever seen of all time. It's so mind-boggling that someone thought up of this in 1968 and brought it to fruition. It's so mind-boggling that this was done, and it was done even before the moon landing. So that is even more crazy. And now when we watch films, it's like, someone has already done something this massive, this amazing. So what are we even like thinking right now? Can it really live up to that? Whatever we think, because we owe so much to films like this and people from back in the day who thought up so much like this. So those are things that I think about. And even like sci-fi, science fiction, other types of science fiction, fantasy films. How much do we owe to Jodorowsky's Dune, which was never even made? How much has it influenced in so many films that has come out today, like Star Wars, Alien? There's still Star Wars films and TV shows coming out to this day. And all of it was so, people thought up of that and um, had so much influence from the 1960s, 1970s. So, it was really the golden era of creativity and film language. That's what I like to believe. That's what I think. And I feel like a lot of the best films have already been made. I hope to be proven wrong, but as a medium, I think it really peaked in those eras. And when you go back to silent films, when you look at like Ziga Vertov or like Battleship Potemkin and um, Dr. Mabuse, The Gambler, and you see, these people have already made such grand, epic films with so much cinematic ingenuity and detail that it's like we have so much nowadays to make films and build up out of that knowledge. And I feel like we haven't even scratched the surface of what film can do. We're still stuck in the beginning stages of film. I feel like I don't know what is gonna come after the standard narrative film. Where we're gonna go with making films with VR and utilizing whatever the latest technology that comes out, of course ethically. I'm really curious to see what happens, and once the Hollywood systems are not as strong anymore, the standard um, um, you know systems that are there to make films, big budget films. What if that all collapse and everyone can make films in a democratized way? Whatever they think about, they can put it to film. Um, that is something that I'm really excited about and want to see. Or we would not have films altogether. We'll just go into other types of mediums. an evolved medium of film or whatever, And I'm really curious to see. And of course, yeah, I went on a tangent. Um, I want to get back to the film. Um, you know, I think this movie, a lot of things that were done was very simplistic. When you really get down to it, the movie, aside from what happens in the very end, which is more open to interpretation, up until that point, the end sequence, everything that comes is very, very simple. There's not that complicated of a story when you look at it. I think that was also kind of intentional because back in the day in 1968, I don't think a lot of people knew much about space and futuristic technology. So if you present a futuristic technology and you also make a really complicated story, I think the audience would zone out. And so it was very good that the story was not that complicated. Um, and I saw a lot of movies from the 60s and 70s. They take very simple stories and really develop within those simple stories to something very deep. They really go into it. Like, I even reviewed the Deliverance, which is a very simple movie. But they really go deep into the psychology of the men. Um, yeah, that's I think what is the strong suit of a lot of these films from the 1960s or before, and even the 1970s. I really like that about these films. Um, and After that, furthermore, like at the end of this film, I really wanted to ask what was the point of it? How did the main character end up in this strange location after traveling to Jupiter? Like, what is this location supposed to be? Is the monolith playing tricks on his mind? Why does it need to play tricks on his mind? Like, what is exactly going on? And, he transforms into a fetus in the end. So, how long did it take to happen? And how did it happen without intercourse? Because he's the only one there, and then suddenly he just turns into a fetus. So, I'm wondering, how did it happen? Why did it happen? And I want to ask, like, is this really the next step in evolution? Like, is this really how it's supposed to be? And it's meant to be like a rebirth after space exploration, right? Like, we're all talking about how humans they evolved from apes, and then they developed technology. They have the industrial age with the factories, and then they built more and more technologies, microprocessing, chips, computers, phones, all those sorts of stuff. And then they go into space, and eventually, people. What is the idea is that it's meant to eventually go to space and set up colonies in space. As as crazy as it sounds, and conquer space and become one with space, and then go beyond space. Just keep going beyond and beyond and beyond, and evolving and evolving. So, like at the end, what is the point of that? Is this really how it's supposed to be? I think that's really what Stanley Kubrick asks in this film, at least to my like interpretation. Like, is this really how it's supposed to be? Like, rebirth in space, with a new consciousness. And what does that even mean? What does that even entail? What does that even mean for people on Earth? If they're still on Earth, there's still so many people on Earth who haven't gone to space, and it's going to take time for them to go to space because space technology is going to be so expensive, and only the elites will have all this expensive and advanced technology. There's so many things to really think about. And I feel like this movie, even though I said this is what I think Kubrick is doing, at the same time I also think there's so many questions that this movie raises rather than giving easy answers. I don't think this is a movie that wants to give easy answers, and I like that about this movie. It wants you to think, and I always love movies that make the audience think on their own. That's what I like about my favorite films, like Stalker, Godfather Part 2. These are movies that really force the audience to think about what these characters are doing, why they're doing what they're doing, what is the psychology behind, what is the grand social, the wider social implications of what these characters are doing and what these characters are doing within the historical context of these movies, like whether it's the 1970s, the Cold War, the World War II, post World War II, etc., etc. Yeah, because World War II was such a devastating event that it made people think about so many different things, and it really it brought out a lot of different existential questions. Yeah, because after World War II, there was the nuclear um, war that was going on. Like a lot of people were afraid that nuclear bomb was going to go off at any moment. There was so much tension going on, and you can really see that in the films from the 1960s and 70s. And in the 1960s, there was also the space race that was going on, and that is why 2001 was made. Um, but the funny thing is, even though this movie was so advanced, in 2001, we didn't get this kind of space stations and explorations like we see in this movie, because this movie, it's so advanced. Um, yeah, maybe it was like a very optimistic thinking at that time, which we realized that it's not really feasible. It's there's so many problems that we have on Earth in the current time. So yeah, maybe that's kind of what this movie's trying to say as well. And I might be wrong, I don't know. And that's kind of what I thought about this movie. Do let me know what you think about this movie. And yeah, if you like this video, do share it with your friends. Please give it a like, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.